Hey guys, it's Cubus here. Today I've got for you a review of the first game from Bungie since they liberated themselves from Microsoft and Halo. Let's see if Destiny is patched. Before I start, let me tell you just one thing. When I'm thinking about the art and design in games, I think about two different things. First, there are the artistic merits. For example, how does the game world looks or does it look believable in the universe created by the artists. Another thing in design is how the ideas for gameplay work out. For example, a good looking, convincing location may be good in the first way, but its layout may compromise the gameplay. And the first part is pretty well made in Destiny. Story, although it's a bit cliché, is fun and well written, making you want to see what happens next. The low point of it is the narrative. Most is done by your companion, the Ghost. For almost half of the game your character barely speaks. To be honest, when my guardian started to speak, I was quite shocked, because I totally forgot about his few lines in the beginning. And no, it wasn't done on purpose like in the South Park The Stick of Truth, where it was just another gag. I think that Bungie simply couldn't decide which way to go and tried to do both at the same time. But in my opinion, it didn't work well. Another good thing about the design are locations, each very distinct, easily recognizable and quite convincing. Yet there is one thing breaking the immersion. It doesn't matter if you're on Earth or Moon, Venus or Mars. The gravity and all the movement systems are the same. And when I can assume that Venus might have been terraformed, I'm certain that the Moon and Mars weren't. I understand why this way, so the gameplay was smooth and constant, but they did it in the last Wolfenstein and it was amazing. And I would love to see how this could change the gameplay on each location. And last little objection about locations I have is that they aren't completely player proof. You know, the little details that show if the developer showed them to average player asking him to break the game. Just look at it in the background. Sometimes you are limited by invisible walls and sometimes, well, just look. And last but not least are the enemies. There are few races, each very different. And the most important thing is that each type of enemy is unique and has its strong and weak sides. For example, for most of the Fallen, the head is the weak spot, but for Vex, it's usually a glowing core in the middle of torso. Additionally, they differ in movement. Most Cabal jump on long distances, Vex can teleport, and Fallen can become invisible. Unfortunately, this game has some issues when it comes to design. There are some minor ones, like the steering system while riding a Sparrow. It's different than it would be in other games, and a bit like driving a Warthog in Halo. But I just don't see why it is so. Additionally, there are a few different spaceships included, but I can't work out why, because they don't do much beyond the personalization of your Guardian. Unfortunately, there are bigger issues. One is that the game requires you to be online, either if you play it with someone or not. I presume it's because of AI being processed on the side of the Bungie servers, but I don't think that it's good enough to justify it. Additionally, you can't replay cooperative missions with random players, except for strikes. I've tried to set my lobby as open, and tried to find an option to invite random people, but I just couldn't figure it out. And if you want to complete those famous rides, then you'll need a party of you and 5 of your friends, because that's the only way to do it, as far as I know. But the biggest issue there is the matchmaking, both on the PvP and PvE modes. If you are a beginner, then in player versus player you are joined up with many players that have much higher level than you do. And even though the game says that your stats are boosted, I don't think they are boosted enough. I was constantly caught up in situations where I could fire 3 shots from my shotgun into an opponent. nailing all of them, and then suddenly being killed by him just with one shot of his, also from shotgun. But it can get even worse in the main, let's call it story mode, when you are dropped into the location with a few other players. If they happen to be much higher level than you, then the game will adjust enemies, spawning some that are suitable for you and some that are suitable for them. If you engage the latter, you're gonna have a bad time. They are immune to all your weapons and can kill you with a single blow. But when you're out in open, you can just go around them, so that's not so bad. It's bad when you're in tight corridors and they are in your way to your current objective. Then you are left only with two options: abandon current objective or restart the whole mission, and that can be a real bust killer. All in all, I like the work of artists and the core of the gameplay. The weapons do have a certain kick, so you feel them, and the game can be addictive, especially if you have friends willing to play with you. But those issues with matchmaking and scaling the game to lower levels are so annoying. I'm going to give this game 6 points out of 10 for its design. I know it might be a little low, but I'm going to remember that later, as I don't do half points. To be honest, there isn't much to complain about the game's technical side. Locations are big, and there are no loading screens once you're there. You don't witness any objects to pop up when you're closing up, and the frame rate is rock solid. And any lags you may encounter aren't caused by Bungie servers and only by your ISP. But the thing worth mentioning is an artificial intelligence of enemies. When you shoot one down from a distance with a sniper rifle, they scatter and look for cover. When you are getting closer, they are constantly changing cover and try to corner you. When during a shootout you find them uncovered, their first reaction is to seek for the cover. And many of them are using their attributes trying to outsmart you. For example, basic Cabal troops are jumping high, trying to maze you. But Phalanx are carrying a shield with them, cleverly covering themselves from your fire all the time, even if you're above them. The only way to defeat them is either to use explosives or shoot that little area that they sometimes uncover, so they lose their stability and start to wobble. One thing I've noticed is that AI is probably operated by the servers. I think so because I had a minor problem with my connection once, and for a few seconds before the game disconnected me, the enemies started to ignore me. If I had to complain about anything, it would be the loading times of locations. Sometimes it takes so long that you can literally go and grab something to drink and still come back to a loading screen. Remembering that half point missing in the previous section and admiring near perfect technological side, I'm giving Destiny a max score of 10 points out of 10 for it. I must admit, when I did my regular research on all the DLC add-ons, etc., Destiny is one of few games on the market that doesn't utilize any form of microtransactions. It's especially nice because with its leveling and loot systems, it could be really easy for Bungie to implement it. But obviously it couldn't be so good in this day and age, because for $35 you can buy a season pass. Fortunately, I never had a feeling I was missing anything, so that's okay. But I still think that selling incomplete product and charging you for missing parts is just wrong. But the thing that I dislike the most is game's requirement of broadband connection. As I mentioned before, I do understand why it is so, but I have some doubts about the way how the game box informs you about it. Just look at the cover. It's right here in this square. Let me zoom it in for you. As you can see, Activision informs you about this requirement, but what worries me the most is that Bungie and Activision don't guarantee you that you'll be able to play Destiny tomorrow, and that means they are selling you not a game, but a service, and they can turn it off whenever they want, maybe in 2020, maybe next week, without telling you before they do so. and then you will only be left there with worthless disc that won't work anymore. And I think that if Activision had any decency, they would inform you about it all with something much more visible than this fine print. Putting it together with the habit of selling players the DLC and the unknown future of the game, I can't give Destiny more than 5 out of 10 points for business. There you have it. Destiny is fun and very well made game. It's a unique combination of Halo, Diablo and World of Warcraft. Unfortunately, it seems that Activision isn't completely honest about their marketing scheme. I understand that online games don't last forever, but the way it can be cancelled worries me a lot, and that's the main reason I give a Destiny a total score of 21 out of 30 points. That's all I've got for you today, and as always, thanks for watching. And if you liked this review, don't forget to subscribe this channel and to follow Is It Patched on Facebook.